For this part, now that this has dried, I'm going to show you how to do your neat-ish circles, and we do that in this case using printmaking techniques, which is, you know, kind of a fancy way to say stamping with paint in this case. We're still using acrylic, and that means that nothing is going to bleed through or react, because once this layer is dry, it's not going to react with the next one. So it's going to be straightforward. If you were to use watercolors on the base layer, then they would react with anything that had water in it later. Just so you know, it might bleed through and be really great. It might be a really fun, interesting thing. And it might be something totally unexpected that you need to work with later, and not that that's really a bad thing. I'm just trying to keep it straightforward this time. So we're going to start out a couple of the things that we'll start with: wine cork, roll of tape, cardboard tube. This one is from a paper towel roll. And we're going to paint on these surfaces. You can dip the things right into the paint if your palette is big enough, if that's what you want to do. And you want to do it reasonably thick. This is a synthetic wine cork, and it's going to print differently than a natural wine cork. Not good or bad, just different. So I'm feeling like I want to do a few of those. I don't have a master plan here that I'm trying to execute, just what feels right. You can gently wiggle back and forth. If there were a lot of paint, it might smush out. I mean, a whole lot of paint, it might smush out, and that's okay. If you get irregular edges, this is not something that we're looking for a super precise image with. I tend to gravitate towards these thirds. If you divided your canvas or your paper into thirds this way and this way, things that go along that line, it doesn't have to be exactly on that line, but things that end up being on that line draw the eye naturally, and it feels pretty natural to me to want to put the things there. I might end up covering up some of these, but in any case, we have a starting point. I'm just going to put that here because I don't know if I'm going to use the rose again later. And now I'm actually going to use the paper towel tube. And it's a bit tall right now. So I'm just going to squish it a little bit and cut right through. Mostly it's tall for me because it would hit the camera. But it also otherwise does make it a lot easier to manage, to deal with. So again, I'm going to dab it on fairly thickly here. Use a fairly thick layer. And don't worry at all about trying to get it even or exact, because the irregularity adds a lot of interest. It's very gloppy at that point, so. If you have too little paint on there, then it just doesn't really make any kind of impression. So You're going to estimate where the circle is in the center there, and I'm really guessing. There we go. I like how it ended up kind of wobbly, wonky there, probably from cutting it, or maybe it has something laying on it. Who knows? Artist life. I'm going to do another one in this color, but I'm not going to do all of them just because I want to add variety. I'm not trying to recreate the same mandala all the way around. And I can always change that later. So don't get too stressed if you're like, that's all I can think of. I'm still going with that. That's okay. It's just like if you were like, all I can think of to draw are scallops or these little pointy petals. It's okay. You can just keep going with that. You can keep it all the same, or later go back and add variation. And the cool thing about it, cardboard too, being nice and inexpensive, you can flip it over, use it again. We could even cut all the way down that tube and add variation if we really wanted to. Okay, so you don't have to use the same paints that you used in your background. I just happen to be doing that for simplicity's sake right now. My kids have a friend over for a sleepover. I don't know if you all can hear that. Okay, so I don't know if you saw there initially, it didn't have any impression at all there, so I just, before I lifted up totally, I put it back down and kind of smushed it over. Because this is an irregular, imperfect method, we're not really going to worry about techniques where you can't do a double impression, or things that you might worry if you're familiar with rubber stamps. It's if you're trying to get a real crisp image, you don't put the stamp down the second time. But that's not what we're going for, so we don't worry. For now, I'm not going to put anything with that one, and I'm going to move on to this bigger print making device, also known as a tape roll, as an empty tape roll. Holy crap, did you see that, that spider? It just jumped right out. Okay. We have guests. Okay, so I'm going to do the this golden straw Americana acrylic paint for the next one. So I keep wanting to sing second verse, same as the first, because we're doing the same thing that we did last time. So, yeah. Is anybody else thinking of the movie Ghost now, or Patrick Swayze starts singing to Whoopi Goldberg to try to get her attention? That's what that song makes me think of, because that's where I heard it. And this one's a lot thicker, so it's more stable there. And because it's really big, I'm just going to put it on this one, and then we will move on. Okay, I'm going to stop it here, dry this, and we'll come back and talk about the paper parts.